And one of the big things about naval special warfare that I take so much pride in being able to tell people is that naval special warfare was never segregated. We didn't give a shit who you were. If you would get in that water and swim, and those beaches in World War II, you were welcome, and you always have been. You always have been. And some of our original frogmen from World War II, and he talks about them in the book because he studied, were black UDT frogmen.
Hey, Don. Tom Iliopoulos, 513-886-4328. 886-4328. Don, I've watched your videos on YouTube, and I know you're a Navy SEAL, and you know what? Fuck you, you fucking bitch. You know what? You support Donald Trump. You absolutely support what is not supported with the Constitution. I would expect much better than you from them. You know, dude, I've watched you. You're a fucking piece of shit, actually. If you support those guys, Donald Trump and these fucking traitors, and, you know, get your fucking shit together. Who gives a fuck about these people who are pretending to be Navy SEALs? Fucking dick. Thank you, Don.
Why would you need a knife underwater? You alluding to killing enemy swimmers?
Not a Navy SEAL then. You're not even a Navy SEAL if you don't know what a knife is for underwater.
If you alluding to killing enemy swimmers?
Yeah, I train them how to do that.
Kill enemy swimmers?
Yes, I train them how to do that.
Do you know what the likelihood of bumping into an enemy swimmer is underwater?
I know. That's the reason the Navy didn't have me full-time and do more of it, because they only considered water as a medium to go through to get to your mission. They didn't understand or see the value in training, hand-to-hand combat in the water, even though I did train them a few times.
In the water? Hand-to-hand combat in the water. You recall a SEAL training class?
What's that again, sir?
Bud's class?
Yes, sir.
Which one was that?
That's the initial training to even be considered or become a Navy SEAL.
You got a number for it?
For my class,
in
particular, I was in the 170 range.
Oh, well, that's pretty wide.
Yes.
Anything after 17, a number? 171, 172?
We were in the mid 170s.
Yeah. I had heard Team 2.
No, sir. I don't know. And that's the other thing, too. I don't know where they're giving you, all this information from. They gave you the wrong middle names. They gave you the wrong, everything. So I don't know what they're going with.
Well, I'll tell you, there's only 3 guys named Flores listed in the entire SEAL database, and you ain't one of them. And you're not getting the training class, right? That class graduated on April 27, 2012. I verify fake SEAL, sir. It's one of you guys who always do it. I'm looking at the SEAL database and you ain't listed. Shut up.
I hated that.
Yeah. Nice try.
A Philadelphia native is marking Veterans Day by sharing his story of his place in military history. John Watts was one of the very first black Navy SEALs. He joined the Navy back in 1965 at the age of 17. At the time, Watts only knew a handful of black men who even attempted the feat, and he was the only black man in his platoon. He talked about his experience with Action News race and culture reporter Taronda Thomas. Watts recalls it was a challenge physically and emotionally. Some fellow SEALs didn't think he was worthy, he says. Others gave him the nickname Shadow as an alternative to a racial slur. In the new book, Shadow SEAL, Watts relives his journey and why he says he felt compelled to enlist in the Navy.
I owed it to myself, and I owed it to this country. Even though I still hadn't achieved all that the promise was for this country. I I had achieved more than some had expected. My great-grandfather...
And we thank you for your service, sir. Watts grew up in North Philadelphia. Incredible story. The book is Shadow Seal, available on Amazon.
Hello?
John!
Yes.
Hey, John, it's Don Shipley, sir. I bought your book. I read your book. I enjoyed your book. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. I hope you enjoyed the book.
I did enjoy the book. It's hard to imagine that kind of racial bigotry going on in today's military, let alone back then. That's crazy.
Well, that's how it was back in the 60s.
What do you think the message would be when we have such a tough time recruiting today for these young guys reading that? Do you think it goes on today?
No, I don't think it is much today as it was. You still have your diehards that preach racial hatred, but people are more accepting of each other today.
Well, I'm glad you would say something like that after what you've been through. I don't know. I saw the newscast in Philadelphia as well. I would think some of that would frighten off these younger guys that aspired to join.
Well, I grew up in North Philly, and I don't know if you ever heard of a police commissioner and a mayor by the name of Frank Rizzo. He was one that bred a lot of racial hatred back in the day. And, I grew up during the race riots and all that kind of stuff during the day. But, it's a lot better.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It seems like everything you open up today in the news and the internet, you look at Yahoo News and Microsoft News, it is nothing but this terrible racial hatred and equity, inclusion. It's just it's getting frightening out there. That we're coming close to another, I don't know, race war. Would that be a bad way of saying that? That just everybody's just
would be a bad way of saying it, but there are those that try to push the country in that direction.
Yeah, there's a lot of hatred out there right now, and so
Well, that's because they don't know Jesus.
They don't know Jesus. Perhaps you're right about that.
They don't know Jesus.
It sounds like you do. It sounds like you're a religious man.
Yes, I am.
That's
very much so.
That's fantastic. Now, mind you, any reference to SEALs, BUDS, combat in Vietnam, anything like that never happened. I'm sure the first part of the book where he talks about growing up and going to school has a lot of accuracies in it, but when he'd lie about all that other stuff, you can't believe a shitting thing in there. And the end of the book where he's talking about his life afterwards and all that, I'm sure it has a lot of accuracies, but I'm sure it has a lot of bullshit, a ton of bullshit in it, because the entire thing about joining the Navy, becoming a SEAL, going to BUDS, is just total. It's a total lie, a total disturbing fabrication of it. Did you skimmed over it, sir? Did you have a SEAL training class you went through?
Yes. Yep, in Coronado.
Yep, and a number for that, sir?
I beg your pardon?
Did you recall a number for that SEAL training class?
Yes, it was 85.
85. How about that?
It was a very early class.
Very early class. Oh boy, how about that? And Vietnam, I'll be doggone. So, sir, would you be surprised to know that class graduated on 23 January 1976?
Well, no, I wouldn't be surprised.
Classified stuff?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised.
That was,
I wouldn't be surprised how my own mind works nowadays.
oh, I get it. I get it. So, in a nutshell, Watts is on a ship called the Oglethorpe, and he gets orders to go to SEAL training, and he reports to SEAL Team 1's quarterdeck. Why aren't you going over to the training center? You know, this is where he starts getting shit wrong. But the minute he gets to Bud's training, a Master Chief labels him Shadow because they couldn't use the N-word. You're not allowed to. So they called him Shadow as a racial slur. Not only him, but he was the only black guy in his Bud's class. But there was a Mexican that all the instructors and everybody else referred to as wetback. So you had Watts, you had this Mexican guy, and you had this blonde-haired surfer punk dude that none of the instructors liked either. So it was the torrid threesome of those guys. I didn't explain why. I didn't know why they didn't like the one guy, Gardner, but it was all them against everybody else, and it was horrible what they didn't do anything. It's made up in his mind. Did you, don't know, he's a bit younger than you, sir. He's a SEAL named Aaron Pratt. He's a black guy in California. And Aaron, I'm reaching out to him because of the rate. Now, he's much younger. This happened in '84 when he was in the Navy. He was taken prisoner with 21 other SEALs in Libya. And
where was he taken prisoner?
In Libya. 21 SEALs, including him. And he was the only black guy. There were 20 white guys in that group, and the Libyans executed all 20 of the white guys because of the way they saw them treating Aaron, the racial hatred that they treated Aaron. They ripped out his toenails 3 different times and then made him watch them execute all those white guys. And they let him loose. Racial hatred.
Brother Howe, during church service today, you turned to me and gave me a brief introduction of a gentleman sitting across the aisle from us. Tell us who this gentleman is sitting beside you.
Well, this is Aaron Pratt, and he's a former Navy SEAL that spent a number of years in the Navy, and he was involved in the war in the Middle East and was captured on a mission. And he, along with a number of other Navy SEALs, how many, Aaron?
21.
21. And they were mistreated, tortured, and all those things. And if I'm correct, I think you were the only one that survived all this. Yeah, he's the only survivor of those 21 Navy SEALs.
Well, that's incredible. I don't know where his training was or what he had to go through in his training, but the 60s was a whole different ball of wax. I'm sure, I don't know how they treated him or how they referred to him, but it was very nasty period of time. I wouldn't want to go back to the 1960s at all. I mean, I grew up in an all-black neighborhood. Matter of fact, the only white guys I knew, white people I knew, period, were my teachers in school or the guy my dad bought our suits from.
How about
he was
that?
a Jewish guy. And
well, I'm calling Aaron in a little bit. He had done some YouTube videos, and that was done in a church. He was telling one of the church elders in there, and they recorded it, this story of being captured as SEALs. And, he was talking as well in there. This is in front of the church. And he was talking about being lowered into a pit full of excrement and the leeches that were on him in a bamboo pit. And you know what that reminded me of, sir?
What?
It reminded me of the Rambo movie, where I didn't know they had bamboo in Libya, and they would lower him.
Remember they did that to him.
I didn't know they had bamboo in Libya, but it was really reminiscent of that scene in Rambo where they lowered him in and scraped the leeches off of him. And I watched some other. You were talking about the vaccinated children having their arms chopped off.
Yes.
We went back there, and they had come and hacked off every inoculated arm. There they were in a pile of little arms.
The Viet Cong were very cruel, and they were cruel to the people, especially up in the high mountain yard areas. That's where the Green Berets were stationed, up into that area. And my base was in Da Nang, and we went up and down the Perfume River from Da Nang to Hue.
I saw that as well, a lot of the Perfume River things and spreading lime on the bodies. You saw that, and
Yeah.
that was almost like right out of Full Metal Jacket. You saw Full Metal Jacket, they had scenes like that in it. Also, that they would feed you guys. They wouldn't feed you guys any peas or carrots and stuff on the ship so that BC couldn't look through your crap.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, you were talking about food that they would not feed you on board the ship because...
Well, it's not that they wouldn't feed us. When we were preparing for long insurgents, when we were planning to go out for periods of time, when you're back in base, you took showers with regular soap that left a specific odor on your body. You couldn't do that when we were getting ready to go out because it would give you away. We started eating fish, more rice, more Vietnamese type foods. So your feces would have that same odor, that same
I get you.
smell. Your urine. I mean, you just had to blend into the environment.
Well, Bud's ends, and he goes to SEAL Team, and there are 3 of the nastiest racists in his SEAL platoon. He never mentions a single chief petty officer. It's a lieutenant. It's just some lieutenant there that the 3 of them are together, and the lieutenant would tell the white guys to knock that off. They were the most wicked Klansmen, and their families had killed black people, and just all the Civil War and all this other stuff. He is building you up. This is what he and Ortega and Gardner are subjected to, is this terrible stuff from in his own platoon, and he goes out of his way to say he was more worried about getting shot in the back by one of his own guys than he ever was the Vietnamese. He goes into great detail about that, and it never ends. The N bomb, the N bomb, the N bomb, the N bomb. That was that gunner guy with his sock, his sock. You were able to work up enough to.
Gunner and I got to be good friends.
Well,
after the end, and he he was one of those hard-nosed guys. His family was KKK members, and they preached hatred, and he fell into that line. But you know, after we had a emergency blood transfusion, and he went to the hospital and found out that I was the one that gave him the blood, he changed his whole attitude.
So the bit about masturbating into this guy's filthy, stinking ass sock, he talks about the platoon coming back from an operation and going on board a landing craft utility, an LCU, and going below decks. And when you look at the Oglethorpe, it was a cargo attack. It carried lettuce and eggs and milk and shit like that. And then they would use those landing craft to deliver those stores to the shore and to the fleet, the other ships that were out there. That's what he did. He delivered lettuce. And you can see on the Oglethorpe, he had a working knowledge of that. He was an assault boat coxswain. So was I before I became a SEAL. The whole Saving Private Ryan bit, going into the beach and stuff like that. But he didn't do any combat bull. He delivered milk. He was a milkman in the Navy. Yeah, a milkman. But on board an LCU, you can see the deck of the Oglethorpe, which he was on, is lined with assault craft. He went down below after a terribly long, weeks-long operation to get some rest, and that's when he decides to jerk off in Gunner's sock and load it up, and Gunner squished in it the next morning. You know, if that story just really consumed me, but it ain't even close to what really gnaws at me. But basically, these three guys in the platoon were the absolute ringleaders and made his life a living hell. They never accepted him. Nobody accepted him. The BUDS instructors, the Master Chief, no one accepted him because he was black. And I take a lot of offense to that. He talks a lot in here about rescuing prisoners of war, and I get after him pretty doggone good. When you are captured, you are now a prisoner of war. If they put their hand on you, you're a prisoner of war. And he backstrokes out of that here real quick. Sir, did you ever know Admiral Tom Richards?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, I interviewed Admiral Richards, SEAL, Vietnam vet guy. And he said that his SEAL platoon in Vietnam was the only POW rescue mission of the entire Vietnam War. And they never recovered. No Americans were ever recovered in Vietnam. They rescued, trying to get Americans. They had moved them out of the camp a few days before. They rescued some Vietnamese, South Vietnamese soldiers. And that was the only rescue mission of POWs in the entire war.
Well, we didn't go to any POW camps. All we did was rescue or go after downed pilots, chopper pilots, bomber pilots, and they were taken prisoner, and they were just trekked through the jungle. They never made it north above the DMZ. And we would go in after them. And to the best of my recollection, we only got two pilots we brought back. But we never went to any POW camps.
A prisoner of war meaning they were taken prisoner.
Yes, but they were never indoctrinated into any kind of POW camp.
It gets to a pinnacle of hatred between these three guys in the platoon. platoon, and they're just down on the Mexicans and the blacks and Gardner, and they're just afraid they're going to kill them. And they're on an operation, and all of a sudden he hears a crack. And this log with a big hunk of metal on it from a tree swings down as he screams for Gardner, "Look out!" But it's too late. It decapitates his buddy Gardner. Cuts his head off. Right there in the jungle. On an operation. And what's Gunner have to say about Gardner getting decapitated? 1 down, 2 to go. So he talks about having to haul out Gardner's corpse over his shoulder while another guy sticks his head in a rucksack, a duffel bag, he says, and they haul it out. That's the end of Gardner. Now it's just him and Ortiz against all these racist SEALs.
KKK members, and they preached hatred, and he fell into that line. But after we had a emergency blood transfusion, and he went to the hospital and found out that I was the one that gave him the blood, he changed his whole attitude.
I remember reading that from the book. That was crazy that you'd do that for a guy who just abused you so badly.
Well, he was one of the team, and you gotta make yourself different. You gotta stand out and not be a part of the crowd.
Yes, I get it. I get it, sir. Every dog has his day. One of these operations, Gunner gets badly wounded. Badly wounded. So they find a cave and they stick Gunner in there until they can get him to a helicopter, and he needs a blood transfusion. Now, Gunner has been a complete freak show to John Watts, Fireman Watts, and Watts gives him, they give him a blood transfusion. Okay, now, I don't know if anybody knows anything about blood transfusions, but you don't give them in the field. You're not prepared for that. No SEAL corpsman is going to be prepared for anything even close to that. But he gives him a blood transfusion and saves his life. This is the part of this where he, throughout the whole book, as these white racist guys are attacking him, he stands up silently, but he stands up. He doesn't make it. He labels himself the hero through every ordeal, that he was the better man. He just took it, shrugged it off, and just tried to stay the consummate professional team guy SEAL. Right until this shit, Gunner and I had the same blood type. No one else on the team. So it would be up to me to save the racist asshole's life. I asked myself, why in hell would I want to help him after the shit he's put me through? The world would be better off without him. But who am I to judge? I decided. So I went through with it. Command contacted the lieutenant and gave him new coordinates for the chopper pickup. We made it there without any further injuries. He saved the guy with a blood transfusion in a cave in Vietnam. That just never happened. So he writes, as soon as we get back to Da Nang, Gunner was taken to the base hospital. He had the golden ticket home, an injury serious enough to prevent him from performing further service, but not fatal or too serious like the loss of a limb. After a week had passed, the team went to the hospital to see Gunner. As we entered the room, I was holding a boom box that was blasting a James Brown song, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. Gunner looks out of his bed, and it was a far cry, he said, from the country music that Gunner listened to. I went over to his bed with the boom box, and Gunner shouted over the noise, "What the hell is this coon music you're playing?" I replied, "Do you remember telling me that even just 1% blood makes you a nerd? Do you remember telling me that? Well, welcome to Soul Town, Gunner. Did anyone tell you where your blood transfusion came from? You are now officially a nerd because you got my blood. And when your firstborn son comes out looking like me, it'll be because he has my blood too. He writes, you could see the anger and hatred welling up in Gunner's eyes. Before he could gather himself to reply, I turned and walked out of the room, a huge smile on my face and a jump in my step. So me with that story, my deep thinking thing that I do, you had to put so much thought into that. What are you trying to do? You're trying to make money off of a book, obviously, by tearing down white people from incidents that never happened. This never happened. But how well you handled the situation and all this, and you saved the racist KKK family guy's life by doing it. And you stood up and you were the better man for doing it. Racists. Are you familiar with a website called Valor Guardians?
Valor Guardians.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Yeah. Valor Guardians got 70 pages, 70 of your military records and posted them up. I know you were an EN 3. You served 3 years, 7 months, and 20 days. And you were an assault boat coxswain. So you and I share some of the same ground, because before I became a SEAL, that's where I saw SEAL training going on. I was at ACU 1 in Coronado, California. I had to ask somebody, who are those guys? And they said, those are SEAL candidates. And I thought, my gosh, I might give that a try. And it all worked out. But you looked like you had a really good tour in the Navy on the, they RER1'd you. They wanted you back. But, sir, they have outed you as a terrible phony for those lies that you would tell about blood transfusions. None of those other guys were ever SEALs. I didn't know if you even were aware of them doing that to you.
No, I had not.
Oh, my. There's some serious John Watts haters out there right now.
Well, I'm sure there are. And I had a lot of them when I was in the Navy.
No, I don't know about that, John. I counted the times you used that N-word in your book and all this racial hatred. And I'm a paramedic as well. You can't just give somebody a blood transfusion. You made all that up, and you used movie lines to it. And I just told you.
I didn't use any movie lines.
Yes,
and
you did.
I have,
there were no records destroyed. Phonies tell the same stories all the time.
What you're saying. And
there were no records burned in St. Louis, sir.
I experienced a lot of difficulty when I was in the Navy. You know what pushed me to go into the Navy in the first place?
I have no idea, but I'm sure it's going to revolve around some kind of racist stuff.
No. There was a TV series that came out, I guess was in the early 60s, late 50s, called Sea Hunt.
Yeah, Lloyd Bridges. The white guy.
And I used to watch that regularly. If they found my records, they're doing better than the Navy could do. It took me over 4 years. Over 4 years.
Okay, John, let me cut to the chase.
Navy to recognize that I was
I'm looking.
in Vietnam in the first place.
John, I'm looking at a picture of you, F.N. Watts, on the USS Oglethorpe, AKA 100. I see you're qualified.
AKA 100.
Yeah.
Oglethorpe, and I did a med cruise with them.
I'm sure, John, but you were not a SEAL. Would you at least admit to that?
No, I can't do that because that in itself would be a lie.
Oh.
And I'm not going to sit here any longer and let you degrade me.
No, you've degraded yourself enough.
You're speaking very...
And I'll tell you what, John, you are an absolute racist, a disgraced racist, and a racist on the other thing, that you would tell those lies about white people to stir that racist pot. And that Aaron Pratt clown out there about all those white guys being executed is a total bullshit story, too. I retired as a SEAL. My friends and family are all SEALs. And We don't like you guys standing up there and writing a terrible bullshit book like that. And if you Google your name up there with that shadow seal, you'll see what Valor Guardians has done to you. I'm surprised you haven't found out about it yet.
All right, well.
Good. Keep watching those war movies and making up stories about jacking off. And how do you come up with, that's the...
You taking the time to talk to me?
That's the degenerate side of you, that you would come up with a story of sticking your penis in some dirty sock and masturbating into it. John, you've got some issues, buddy. So I'll see you, man.
Were you in Nam?
No, I wasn't.
No, you weren't in Nam, please. You don't know.
I verify fake seals, sir.
One of the things I hated.
It's one of you guys always do it. I'm looking at the seal database and you ain't listed. Shut up.
I hated that.
Yeah.
And,
Nice try.
okay.
Assault boat coxswain and cargo handling course, 4 October 65 to 29 October 65. Assault boat engineer course, 12 September 66. They got everything. I'm surprised at how complete these records are. And they've also contacted that reporter at Action News that did that story, but she doesn't care because it's just a better story when it's got so much racist stuff. In a time like this, with a boiling point, you would write some crap like that and just try to inflame people. That's where the racist thing goes to the other side. Black people can be racist themselves when they tell so many despicable, disturbing lies about white people to get attention. You should have been happy with what you did in the Navy as an assault boat coxswain and a Vietnam vet. I see you served up there. You got a Vietnam Service Medal, with a Vietnam Campaign Medal. All right, man, I'm tired of dealing with you. You keep watching those war movies and making up stories like that from the war movies because they're just little recollections in your head you can mold and do anything else with, okay?
All right, well, you live long, be prosperous, and stay healthy.
God be with you, man. I'm glad you're a man of God. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
There is so much of that going on today. It's like guys are standing in line to inflame the racial tension in this country, and he's one of them. That book is absolutely disturbing. The things that he writes in there about how he was treated in the Navy, and none of it's true. None of it's true. Vietnam vet, yeah. I love how they turn that on me, that I wasn't in Vietnam, so I don't know what I'm talking about. I am a naval special warfare historian. And one of the big things about naval special warfare that I take so much pride in being able to tell people is that naval special warfare was never segregated. We didn't give a shit who you were. If you would get in that water and swim, and those beaches in World War II, you were welcome, and you always have been. You always have been. And some of our original frogmen from World War II, and he talks about them in the book because he studied, were black UDT frogmen, the first. And my command master chief at SEAL Team 1, when I showed up, was a black man named Master Chief Claude Willis, a Vietnam vet. And so I take terrible offense to all of this, that you would take an institution as fine as naval special warfare and their history of unracial anything and twist and contort it into a disturbing, now this is disturbing stuff, disturbing that this guy got his penis erect and stuck it in a dirty sock of a guy that he says was a SEAL that was just a complete racist and ejaculated in his sock. And that guy put it on the next morning and went nuts. Who thinks up disturbing shit like that? Who does that? Unless you're disturbed and did it, but you're even more disturbed just for thinking it up if it never happened. And that whole bit about oh my God, that guy, whoa. I'm on a flip and roll, I can tell you that. What a clown. What a absolute clown. And his middle name is Oscar. And we don't let good dudes named Oscar in SEAL team. That's the only racial thing we have. We got things about names. We send you to the Coast Guard or the Air Force or something. Nobody named Oscar, John Oscar Watts. They took one look at that and went, nah, we're not letting you in SEAL team. That's the only racial thing that we have. We don't like your name. You're going somewhere else, man. Jesus.